Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Israel is warning Iran of devastating consequences if it attempts any further attacks on the Jewish state. Yet the regime in Tehran faces a potentially greater challenge from within.
A number of opposition groups exist inside Iran's own borders, and analysts are calling for the West to support their struggle for freedom. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Recently, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke directly to the Iranian people.
Yet there is one thing Khamenei's regime fears more than Israel. You know what it is? It's you, the people of Iran. That's why they spend so much time and money trying to crush your hopes and curb your dreams.
Iranian-American filmmaker Houman Halili is fueling those dreams through 18 banners posted throughout Israel, celebrating those women defying the regime.
I wanted to inspire the women of Iran to keep fighting because what they're doing takes so much courage to show their hair. And when someone gets murdered, I don't want them to be forgotten.
One school of thought is that the Islamic regime could potentially collapse without a war. One believer is Yigal Karman, founder of the Middle East Media Research Institute, or MEMRI. For more than 25 years, Karman, a former IDF intelligence officer, has helped bridge the language gap between East and West by translating multiple languages in the region through MEMRI.
No one wants war. No American President Trump will not want war. No one, we don't want anybody. Can it be done without a war? The answer is absolutely yes.
Karman explains part of that is due to Iran's multi-ethnic population.
Iran is made up of 50% almost Parsis. The other 50% are ethnic minorities which are repressed for many years by the Islamic regime. And they struggle for their freedom, for rights, for autonomy, for confederation. Some want even independence.
Despite that quest for freedom, Karman sees the West doing little to help them.
The West is not helping freedom fighters, true freedom fighters, Baluchis, Ahwazis, Kurds, and Azeris. And there are more, but smaller. These four groups, ethnic groups, seek their freedom, fight for it.
Karman stays in regular contact with many of these leaders.
We are even publishing, giving them a platform, publishing their material. Lately, we published an article by the Dr. Aref El-Kaabi, who is the leader of the Ahwazis in south of Iran, all the region of the oil. It's a beautiful article, a dream of peace and understanding and of freedom. Freedom of the control of the crazy Ayatollahs. That's the only name for them.
That's why Karman believes the West should get more involved.
They need to be helped. This will remove the Ayatollahs regime like that, if the West helps them.
Any help ending the Iranian regime would transform the Middle East. And that's a dream Netanyahu wants the Iranian people to believe.
I have no doubt that one day in a free Iran, Israelis and Iranians will build together a future of prosperity and peace.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
That's one to look forward to. It's a peace that will only come from within Iran. Can they come together to say we no longer want to live in this theocracy, the crazy Ayatollahs? But until the army turns, until the secret police turn, I don't see this becoming real. And the reason is all the public executions that have happened. If you were part of any of the protests the past few years, if you were a leader, they took you and they hanged you publicly. So they would erect these cranes, and you would dangle in front of the entire town, the entire city, as an example of what happens to people who challenge the regime. But it is crazy. Imagine a culture where if you're a woman, you have to be courageous to show your hair. And if your scarf isn't tied the right way, if it's not, all your hair isn't tucked away, a teenage girl can be taken from the streets and literally beaten to death. and there be no consequences for the men who so horribly abused her. It's just unimaginable what is happening there. And the West should rise up. You see all the current critique of Israel. Well, where are the campus marches for the freedom of the women of Iran? Where is that coming from the UN? Where is that coming from the International Court of Justice? Where are those voices? And let's stand together. Freedom is the oxygen of humanity. If you live in this kind of culture, you do not have freedom. And let's pray, let's earnestly strive. Can there be freedom in Iran today? In other news, Benjamin Netanyahu had harsh words for the Biden administration in a speech to the Knesset yesterday. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. Speaking to Israeli lawmakers, the prime minister criticized President Biden and his advisors for what he called faulty judgment and policies in Israel's war against Iran's proxies, including trying to stop Israel from carrying out an offensive against Hamas in the southern Gaza city of Rafah.
If you go in, you will be alone. He also said that he would stop arms shipments that were important to us, and he did so. Several days later, Blinken appeared and repeated the same things, and I told him,
if we have to, we will fight with our fingernails.
The prime minister delivered that last line in English as he said it to Secretary Blinken. In a speech, Netanyahu also said he and President-elect Donald Trump see eye to eye on the threat of Iran. He also confirmed that Israel hit a specific component of Iran's nuclear program in its attack on Iran last month. Meanwhile, Hezbollah is said to be responding favorably to a U.S. ceasefire proposal. However, as U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein arrived in Beirut for talks this morning, the terror group launched more missiles at central Israel. Well, turning now to the confirmation battle shaping up over President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for Attorney General. Mr. Trump is giving his full support to former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz after an attorney for two women claims they told the House Ethics Committee that Gaetz paid them for sex in 2019. That was while he was a member of Congress. The lawyer also said one of the women testified she saw Gaetz having sex with a minor who was 17 years old at a party in 2017. Gaetz, who resigned from Congress when he was nominated, denies the claims. The committee, which ended its investigation when Gaetz stepped down, will decide whether to release its report Wednesday. Meanwhile, President Trump confirmed on social media a report that he plans to declare a national emergency and use military assets to enforce his plan to deport millions of immigrants who came to the United States illegally. Turning to the war in Ukraine and a grim milestone, it has now been 1,000 days since Russia invaded its neighbor in February 2022. As the human toll continues to mount, there's an ominous development. Moscow is lowering its threshold for using nuclear weapons. CBN's George Thomas reports.
In a makeshift maternity ward in the basement of this hospital in the Kherson region, Rosa Antonova cradles her newborn baby Amelia tightly.
All the plans we had before the war, we decided that there's probably no time to postpone anything for later. We had to live for now. Despite the fact that the war continues, and despite the consequences in the city and in Ukraine in general, we try to hold on.
For her and for people across Ukraine, today's milestone is another sad reminder of how 1,000 days of fighting have led to immense human suffering, with millions of lives disrupted, cities in ruins, and the toll of military casualties growing daily.
Every day we live in Ukraine is a miracle.
In Kyiv, a memorial has sprung up in the heart of the city, dotted with Ukrainian flags, each honoring a soldier who died fighting Russia. Svetlana Kirichenko came to place a flag to remember her fallen son.
I put the flag so that someone would pass by and see that this person lived once, gave his life for all of us.
Despite heavy losses, Ukraine has continued to fight in the face of escalating Russian attacks. With 2 months left in office, the Biden administration is now helping Ukrainians take their fight directly to the Russians. The White House has allowed Ukraine to use American-supplied long-range Army tactical missile systems.
This would be the first time they've been used to target inside Russia, and significantly inside Russia.
The missiles will be deployed in the Kursk region, where Ukrainian troops are facing Russian and North Korean forces.
It's limited to Kursk, and it's limited, of course, to the amount of missiles that we can get to Ukraine in the near future. So it is a substantial step, but it might not change the battlefield that much.
The Kremlin is warning that deploying long-range missiles is only adding fuel to the fire. Russia's president updated his country's nuclear doctrine today, saying that he has the right to use nuclear weapons if attacked with conventional missiles by a country backed by a nuclear-armed nation. George Thomas, CBN News.
Thanks, George. And adding to that, Gordon, Moscow claims Ukraine fired those long-range missiles for the first time today and that it shot down 5 and damaged 1.
Well, I say the escalation in this is entirely on the Russian side. They're the ones who invaded. They're the ones that decided to use rape as a weapon of war. They're the ones who targeted civilian facilities, hospitals, schools. They targeted power plants. They targeted water supplies. They targeted food supplies. They're the ones enforcing embargoes at the port. All of that is on their side. What did they expect Ukraine to do? Just sit there and take it? Of course, they have the right of self-defense. And of course, in that right of self-defense, you get to go right at the heart of the enemy. And to use a nuclear option in the face of that, why not use peace as an option? Why not say, we're done here. Let's withdraw to our borders in Ukraine. Sorry for the intrusion, but we want peace now. How about that? And if we can have that, then we can avoid a much larger conflict. Here's something to keep in mind. In the 1,000 days of this war, Putin threatened Romania. He said, we'll see you in Bucharest. That was his next goal after Ukraine. Is Poland on that list? Both Romania and Poland are part of NATO, and he's directly threatening them. And Romania has no army. It's not like Ukraine. They don't have the ability to defend themselves at all. And so his threat that once, Kyiv falls, his next stop is Bucharest. We should wake up and take these things very seriously. When he speaks, does he really mean that? And if he does, what's our response? I've been arguing for a long time that we ought to allow Ukraine to strike into the heart of Russia, to show every Russian exactly what's going on in Ukraine, and do it very effectively and very immediately. The level of propaganda within Russia is truly unbelievable. The citizens there somehow think that they're fighting Nazis and that their war is justified and it's a just war. All of these things. These are times, very perilous times for the entire world. And whether it's threats from Iran against Israel, what's happening with Hamas and Hezbollah, threats against Taiwan by China, where the president of China says to his army, prepare for an invasion by 2027. 1,000 days of war in Ukraine that could threaten all of Europe. These are days to pray, because the wars and the rumors of wars are here.